Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Chander in Palo Alto.
Hello, this is Arne in Oslo.
So thanks for joining us. This is the second episode of this year, season 2 of Valley Nordic. So today we thought we cover something very basic, foundational to how do people buy things? Like what can we learn from mainly psychology and from observations in the world? This is not classic marketing text, but it's something I came up with a few years ago based on my work in marketing and observations. Why do people buy anything? What drives the decision making? So the idea is if we understand that, then we can make products that fit into that framework. How does that sound, Arne?
Sounds good. So this is, in other words, a topical episode, not news, not gossip, not market. This is topic and learning something, right?
Yes.
Excellent. And we're in the marketing domain, so we're on your territory more than my territory, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is kind of sales, marketing, and product, but I see it more in terms of, not in terms of functional things that academia has made up, but more in terms of society. How do people buy things? So forget the domain that academia has made up. Is it sales or marketing or product? It just, why do people buy anything?
Okay, good. I still, from a simple VC's perspective, I still put it in the marketing box, but that's fair. It has multiple it does have multiple dimensions to it. And we're primarily in the consumer domain, is that correct?
Yes, but it applies to B2B as well, but primarily consumer. Why is it that VCs always want to put things in a box?
We want to simplify things so we can figure out whether it can grow fast or not.
Simplification can sometimes, lose the essence of what it is.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So the question is, why do we buy things?
Yeah.
So how should we think about it?
So this is something I came up with a long time ago, almost 10 years. And we can add the blog post I wrote about this at the time in the notes. But I think there are 4 main reasons why people buy anything. And when you make a purchase decision, it may be one or more of these things. So the first is sex, and that is in terms of evolution, meaning, most people get attracted to the opposite sex, and some get attracted to the same sex. But we do a lot of things so that we are more appealing to the opposite sex, and in some cases, the same sex. So this is, like, it drives a lot of our behavior. If you read evolution, Darwin or any evolution theory, a lot of the existence is to reproduce. The primary function of life, you think, in terms of biology, is reproduction. So if you read, mate selection and all the literature that's out there, a lot of what we do is for mate selection, and then because we have evolved as a society in keeping that mate. So that drives a lot of our decision making. And within that, you have the, men try to show off their wealth or, their physique. So they are considered, strong or more appealing depending on who the woman is. And women, do makeup, fashion. They wear heels, although they may be uncomfortable, to be more appealing. And then it also makes them stand out from the competition. And I want to, preface this. This is not this is all biology literature. It's not in any ways casting any, you know, very politically incorrect or uh, I don't know what the right word is, casting everybody in the same light. Everybody's different, but we are talking about more in terms of, how society works and why people do things in terms of evolution. So that's sex. And the one example I want to give is, when we are showing off brands, let's say I am wearing a sweater that says Armani. So why do I want to show that to people? Like, it's like I'm doing free advertising for that brand. But, the feeling is, okay, if I have that brand that shows off that I'm rich, I have good taste or whatever. So it may be, making me stand out from other men, or it and maybe making me more appealing to women. And same thing when women are, carrying Louis Vuitton bags or, Hermes scarves. Like, why are we showing that off to other people? Like, normally, you wouldn't do that unless you were looking to give out some signal and to the other sex or within your own sex. And most of this happens unconsciously. We don't think about it. This is how we see, movies, TV, social conditioning. So a lot of that happens unconsciously. So any questions on the first one, Arne?
Yeah. So when you bring up, okay, why do people buy things? And number one, sex. I was suspicious that you're in the clickbait business and that we're going there. But then you bring us down to evolution, which now we're off the clickbait track and to something more fundamental. And if I understand you correctly, we're now talking about there's a number of sort of unconscious behaviors around how we fundamentally work as people that we can use to address in taking a product to market to hit our customers essentially and address their needs at that level. So if we keep this in the marketing domain, it's not about having half-naked ladies on top of cars and this sort of thing, but addressing the more fundamental drivers of people aligned around this dimension and fulfill that need.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nothing to do with the physical sex. It's evolutionary sex,
right?
Where we are biologically programmed to reproduce. And you look at any species, like the peacock does a dance, and we do buy a fancy car or wear high heels or carry a bag. So all species have their own thing, and all cultures have their own thing. So within, it's not the same in all countries and cultures. So there's a different ways you signal the opposite sex on how you're unique and how you get attention. So when you're designing products, if you have that in mind, then you think of the logo, what it is, where it goes, the color of it. Is it what kind of signal are you sending? Is it the sophistication that, or money, or you're frugal, you care about money, meaning you don't waste money. So all that goes into that. You can use that during the product development phase, but then you have to know in advance who the target is, what is the price point they're willing to pay, how are you going to stand out from the other competitors or what people are currently using.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Okay. So
we got number one down. What is there? What's the next level, if there is one?
Sorry, what's the next? What next one? Or
Yeah.
okay, next one is attachment. So we spend a lot of time and money in getting attached to things, people, animals. Um, so if we make products that appeal to people's attachment, then you know um, you can sell more of them. So, for example, people generally are attached to money. So, if you give them a deal, they will buy it. If price was an issue, so let's say you're walking around in the store and there was a shirt you wanted to buy and there was $200, and now you didn't buy it, and now you see, oh, it's $50. So at least in the US, people think when they're buying this is, oh, I'm saving $150. So they don't think as much about you're spending $50. They think how much they're saving. And that's been, the conditioning you've had in marketing messages. You grow up, you say, okay, deal. Everybody wants a deal. So you're getting a deal, which you're attached to the money. And like you buy things for other things you're attached to. So for example, people buy sweaters, like designer sweaters for their dogs, or Louis Vuitton. I think one of the big brands came out with like a collar or something for the dog, or I don't know. The dogs, people take their dogs to spas. So dog doesn't know that it's wearing Louis Vuitton or whatever it is, but you are attached to the dog, so you want to do things for the dog. People buy their things for their kids because they're attached to them, and the kid probably doesn't know the designer labels either, but you want to do what's best for your kids because you're attached to the kids. You buy things for a wife or a husband because you're attached to them. So attachment drives a lot of purchase decisions, just because we'd like, this is how we show love or affection to the people, animal, things we're attached to. So now you see, like, I have an iPhone and I like my iPhone. I don't want it to break, so I have a cover. So I paid $40 for a cover because I'm attached to the iPhone. So it's um, so it's people, animals, and things. All the stuff we are attached to, why we buy things for them. Make sense?
All right. Yeah, I get the point of that one. Do you think this is sort of a pretty universal, well, feature, if you like, or do you think this one is also culturally dependent?
Yeah, it's culturally, well, attachment is universal, but what people get attached to is cultural.
Okay.
So for example, in the US, you wouldn't dream of eating a dog, and in Korea, people would eat a dog. So here, people are attached to the dogs, and it's unthinkable. And over there, it's people, the culture evolved differently. Or the deals, like I grew up in India, where the people always negotiate because they want a deal. They're attached to the money. They want to save money. In some other cultures, people just like, I find Nordics in general are less attached to money. But I may be wrong. You can say probably more on that.
Yeah, I think it's highly personal dependent, to be honest.
Yeah. So there are cultural variations on what people get attached to, but attachment is universal.
Okay.
So
Good.
third is, go ahead.
No, go. No, I was just okay. Let's move on.
Okay. Third is identity. So who am I is a question we've been trying to answer for thousands of years. Many books have been written. The search for identity, um, continues. Um, so and that's what makes people religious, patriotic, or hardworking, and it makes them do a lot of things, mainly because of identity. And that is highly variant by culture. So in the US, when you meet somebody, the first thing they ask you is, what do you do? Because what you do for work is a big part of identity in the US. Um, in Europe, in general, they ask you where you're from when you meet somebody, because that's Europe is all blood and soil and history. So it's big part of identity there. And in India, it might be, the caste or the family name, things like that. And then people join, different groups. So that they could be, exclusive and have that part of their identity. So they feel special. I think one of the dilemmas of human nature is we want to be part of a group, but at the same time, we want to be unique. Um, so to do that, you join many things or do many things where there is a group feeling or recognition. So for example, I go to TED. So the TED people who go to TED call themselves TEDsters, and they're generally very nice and helpful to each other. Same thing, people who go to Burning Man, they're burners. And people, let's say, who go to the same church or go to Rotary Club, or go for some hiking trip together every Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, that's another group. So these are all the things where they become part of your identity. It's And the power of social conditioning is such that people sometimes start defining themselves in terms of products. Like, where I live is a coffee culture. So people would say, oh, I'm not a Starbucks person, I'm a Peet's person, or I'm a blue bottle person. So who people actually say that, they start defining in terms of products. Or Coke versus Pepsi is another example, where people say, oh, I'm a Coke person, or I'm a Pepsi person. So, and how the mind works is very interesting. So in all the blind studies they do, people prefer Pepsi over Coke. And this is old data. But when you tell them they are drinking Pepsi or Coke, they prefer Coke. So because it's part of identity. No, if you, say anything to somebody which is opposite to what they think, how they define themselves, they don't like that. So it's tricky. Yeah, like Android versus iOS. Like that could be, I've been in many debates where, an Android person would tell you everything that's wrong with iOS, and iOS would tell you what's wrong with the um, operating system. So they define themselves in terms of I'm Apple person, or I'm a Google person, or Android person. So,
mm-hmm. So I understand the identity here, and sort of that can drive behaviors and decisions around buying.
Yeah.
But if we peel back one layer of the onion, mm-hmm. You can think that there are multiple drivers underneath for it. One would be like belonging to this identity, or it could be the aspiration, right? I'm joining the Rotary Club because then I'm in a circle of this or that. Mm-hmm. Or it could be like, by bringing on this identity, you have this experience that you prefer. Like you prefer the iPhone experience, but iPhone could also be a signal that that you aspire or something like that. Does this, are all of these equally valid points, or is it one more than the other that's sort of driving this identity game?
It depends, it's contextual. So some people prefer, the intuitiveness of iPhone, let's say, over Android. But I don't think well, most people haven't done like apple to apple comparison. Let me do the same thing here versus there and see which one I prefer. So it becomes part of, the Apple has an aura around it. There's a brand. So it's much more complex and nuanced than, okay, you can prioritize this has higher weightage than the other. Like same thing, identity is highly nuanced. Yeah, some like who are you? You can say, oh, you are male, you are citizen of this country, and people sometimes say religion, what religion to belong to. But I'm impressed how the companies or brands that have created this the brand to be so strong that people start defining themselves in terms of the brand. So yeah, like Coke, Pepsi, Apple, Google, and sports. Like, people are ready to kill each other for if their team wins or loses. Like they sometimes seat them in separate parts of the stadium. Um, like, why is that? Like, you win, or I mean, practically you gain nothing if your team loses or gain. It's your identity is you support that team or you are part of that team. You feel like actual emotions in your body when your team is winning or losing. So it's very nuanced. So I don't know if I answered your question, but you can't prioritize this as 1, 2, 3, 4. It's interconnected. Depends on the person, of course.
All right, very good. And on that sports example, it's the Super Bowl on Sunday. Go Niners.
Not this Sunday, yeah, following Sunday.
No, this Sunday.
It's February 2nd?
Yep.
Oh, wow. You know more about Super Bowl
Oh, yeah.
sitting in Norway than I do sitting here.
Wow. Don't miss it. Go Niners. All right. Yeah. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, I watch Super Bowl for the ads, by the way, not for the game. But okay. Number 4 is laziness. So people are lazy by nature. And in marketing world, we call it, making life easier, more convenient. But by nature, if we have option of not doing anything, most likely we won't do anything. So most people, hate their jobs. They don't like to work. I mean, they are happy watching TV, getting entertained, and doing things that they are interested in. Yeah, the work is something most people do to get a paycheck, so that they can do things they like, which is changing with the newer generations, but so far that's how it has been. Like you look at the Google search results, I forget the actual numbers, but there was time when like half of them were people just not typing http / www dot abc.com. Like you just type in the search bar ABC, and that's it's much easier because we're lazy. And it's not just physically lazy, we're mentally lazy. You give people a lot of choices, they get confused because then the brain has to work really hard. And you see obesity is an epidemic or big problem in the US. There are many reasons for that, but I think being lazy is one of them. And people, of course, we know that working out drops off after the first month, and the marketers are very good at leveraging human let's say, bugs in the brain. So they know this laziness thing. Um, it, now I'm dating myself. In old days, you had something called mail order rebate, where you would, buy something and you'll get a coupon with it, and you have to mail it back to get the money back. So it's actual money you can get back. But at that time, the fulfillment rate was 17%. So let's say 100 people bought the product for $100 and they could get $25 back by mailing this coupon. Only 17 of them did, because people forget, and it's, find an envelope and put it in and stamp and go to the post office. People are lazy. And look, why we love our smartphones. Like, it's always there. You don't have to go to the laptop and, type, open. And now we don't want to do that. I think main reason Alexa and these voice assistants are being used is it's less work. You just say, set the alarm for blah, 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 or tell me the time. It's less physical work. So
the tapping on the phone is so exhausting.
Yeah, but it's not like, like, this is biological programming. That's how we are. So, and it's not just physical, it's mental as well in terms of laziness. So that's the fourth one. Any questions on the last one, Arne?
No, so, I mean, to me, like a VC with an engineering background who work better on sort of the numbers and these sorts of things than the philosophy end of it, this is the one that's easiest to somebody like me to understand. And I think it's very aligned with some of the things we've been seeing going on in product design and marketing. You sell convenience, and a lot of product design over the last 10 years have been all about UX, where it's about making the products as easy as possible it is to use, because it takes down the friction of people starting using them, and they keep them hooked by making them super easy. So I think this is, the laziness, addressed through the convenience and user experience is a mega trend, I would say, over the last 10 years.
Yeah. Easy way to remember the model is SAIL, SAIL. So it's S is for sex, A is for attachment, I is for identity, L is for laziness. So now you can give me any product and I can tell you how this applies.
All right, so let me try. So you're saying this is like a complete framework that covers any product?
Yep.
All right.
Any successful product.
let me challenge you.
Yeah, good.
How about computer games? Are they? I would have thought people play computer games because it's fun. That would have been my initial thought. Where do you place something like that in this framework?
Okay, so let's say you're playing a computer game. You buy it, yeah? Why do you buy it? Because you want to be entertained, yeah?
Yeah.
And they're generally, the computer games have levels, so that becomes part of your identity. You want to cross the next level. You consider yourself to be, at whatever, level 1. Now you want to be in the next level 2. Then you get the community with it, the group belonging we talked about as part of playing the game. A lot of the games are multiplayer now. So you have this, that also falls under identity. And then it beats, going out and playing real game. So that's where laziness comes in. It's much easier to sit at home and, use your thumbs than to go out and move the whole body and sweat in playing the game, which is physical in nature. So here I see two of them apply clearly: laziness and identity.
Man, I thought I was just having fun being amused.
You see, not everything can be put in a box, Arne.
All
Okay,
right,
let's
fair
do
enough.
another one.
Oh, let me see. I'm looking at my wall. There's a calendar. Why would I buy that?
I mean, calendar, it's more of utility thing. Like there, I don't know what the calendar, you picked that calendar out of many calendar, yeah?
Well, I think that one was in particular was a gift, but it was probably picked by someone for some reason like that. Yes.
So like, let's take example of the calendar I have. So
Right.
I have a calendar. I like art. That's attachment. I'm attached to art. So I bought a calendar that has art for every day of the year. So every morning I get to see a new painting. So it's clear attachment. And part of my identity I see is that, okay, I like beautiful things. So it plays in the identity domain, not domain, the part of the sale model as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the calendar I bought is because of attachment and identity.
Okay. Cool. There's probably some laziness element to it as well because you want to figure out how, it's an easy way to figure out when to do things or organize your life or something like that, rather than doing it in a different way.
Yeah, but then that's the category.
Right.
That you could buy any calendar. So that would apply to all calendars.
Yeah.
Yeah, the particular one is because of those two.
Yeah, I understand. But
Yeah.
it's still a reason to get a calendar.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think about, airplanes, why we have that, it's because it time you have where you're not buying one. Well, maybe you are, but you get in a different, that becomes part of your identity. You are a private jet owner, then, it's much easier to have a private plane or than, sitting in the coach in, if you have the money. So that goes in the laziness domain as well, buying a plane. So, I mean, you like take anything, like I can see, I can share with you how that fits into it. So if that is the case, that anything that people buy is one or more of these four reasons, then you can leverage that in building products. So when you're thinking about building the product, features, aesthetics, or complexity, think about how it applies. What do you want to appeal to? Because then it will result in a different direction than if you're randomly following things on the surface. Oh, this is the RFP, or it's just a calendar or whatever it is.
Okay, so say I'm looking to sell calendars, and because I have a calendar production line. Now, how do I redesign the calendars to increase the likelihood of being purchased while I address the art person by making an artsy calendar, and then I address it to the San Francisco 49ers sports fan by making it a 49ers calendar instead of an arts calendar, and so forth.
Yeah. So what's the question? Like, yeah, you would.
Yeah. So that's how you would apply it.
Yeah.
In that particular instance.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're the base, is same. It's the creating different versions of the product. The incremental cost is low. Then you can, attract a bigger audience by following that strategy.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And in the B2B world, although it's primarily, consumer products, like people tend to forget, and it's in the B2B world, it's people who are buying things as well. It's not like some unknown entity, like a machine or, a building that's buying your product. A group of people is making the decision to buy your product.
Yeah.
And then you have to see, okay, it's it, with this product, how that makes the decision maker look good. What, like, is it making their life easier? If you're selling, automation software, it's making their life easier. So that's, laziness. If they're attached to control, they you give them more control. So they're buying for attachment. So you can apply that to B2B domain as well, but there it works in a group. So you have to understand buying in a group. So you have to understand the dynamic of how those purchase decisions are made as well.
Yeah, I would venture though to say that there are some additional dimensions when you're selling to a business, and that's sort of the domain where I've been most active.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, there seems to be like some business logic on top of this as to why people would buy it, and they tend to fall into, in my mind, like four main buckets. One being you can save somebody some money.
Mm-hmm.
The business becomes leaner on the cost side, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is it can help grow the business, so you increase revenue. Those are sort of the two main balances of running a business.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are a couple of like additional levers that can help. One is reducing risk. Some businesses that's important. And the fourth one, which these days seem to be almost the most surefire but hardest to impact, is compliance. A number of businesses are heavily under compliance rules, and if those rules hit, they just have to spend the money to fulfill those compliance requirements. Mm-hmm. So those are sort of, in my mind, sort of very rational overlays on dimensions as to why businesses buy and to a certain extent have to buy.
Yeah. So business, you're right, is more complex because a group of people is making a decision. But what you said is theoretically true, but practically how in big companies people buy things is what I call, actually somebody taught me this when I was doing account management, the 3C principle. So where people are making a purchase decision based on, first C is control. With this decision, do they personally get more or less control in the organization? Second, compensation. How does that decision meet their annual goal, or how it affects their compensation and the stock goes up or whatever it is? And third is credit. With this decision, who gets the credit? Is somebody they like gets the credit, they get the credit, how that affects their position in the organization. So those are the human dimensions of that. Of course, if you're buying something, it has to reduce risk or save cost or increase revenue. All that is, of course, there. But the human dimensions are the 3 C's.
Okay, very good. Okay, so if we go back to the framework we discussed here initially, the sale framework.
Yeah.
So you've sort of thought long and hard about this and came up with this framework. Why did you start thinking about this?
So I did consumer marketing at T-Mobile. I had millions of dollars in budget, and you just in big companies it's like a machine that's running, and you are put in a box, and you just you're in that machine. So you don't get to do the fundamental questioning. And then after T-Mobile, I did my first startup in 2009, I think. And then I had to, it was related to, like retail, fashion, marketing. So I had to look into fundamentals because there was no machine and I didn't have millions of dollars. So I was curious why, like at the fundamental level, what is driving that? And I had also studied complex systems at the time, so I got introduced to psychology. So I had read a lot of, sociology, psychology, and I noticed that's not part of marketing literature per se. It's a separate domain. Um, so this, I thought if I, you know, like people talk about 4 Ps of marketing, but they don't get into the fundamentals of why do people buy things. So I thought just for my own clarity, can I come up with, or one of my goals every year is to come up with a new theory. So if I can come up with a theory uh, that is universal, and that explains why we do make these purchase decisions. So that's how I came up with it. But I'm sure there are other things like that, but this wasn't part of the marketing literature when I did an MBA.
Okay, so you sort of felt there was missing a framework sort of around why people are buying within what's the normal frameworks of marketing and product.
Mm-hmm.
So and in what sort of context would you see it in the marketing context, into sort of the normal marketing process?
I think it begins with the product development design. So when you start building the product, you have to see who is the intended audience and what are you appealing to. So if, let's say, the market is really um, okay, let's go to Amazon. When they started, they picked books. The idea was, okay, we can sell books cheaper than any of the guys who are in the market. So they focused on attachment. People want to save money, or the let's say, uh, mm, I'm blanking, but so you start, when you begin, if you have this framework, then you can develop product. Okay, how are we going to leverage this in the product development and when the product is out there? So if you know, let's say, are Louis Vuitton, and you have, I think they are one of the best in terms of balancing accessibility with exclusivity. It seems like everybody's carrying a Louis Vuitton bag, but it's still somewhat exclusive. So how you design the logo, what font you choose, what color of the product you choose. So if you are appealing to the, let's say the evolutionary sex side of thing, like Louis Vuitton shoes, their unique differentiation was that the sole of the shoe is red, and red generally equates with hot, and more sexy or appealing color. So that was their whole identity. So they were appealing to the women, with that in mind. So it begins in product development, then in product positioning, and then in your sales strategy and what distribution channels you pick. So for example, you wouldn't find, an Hermes scarf or jacket at Marshalls, or, where like, where they sell cheap stuff. They want to maintain their status so that your identity is not challenged. If you're buying Hermes, you think, you have sense of style, the respect for the heritage and craft, etc., etc. So they don't want to diminish that identity by being sold at place where things don't look pretty or they're cheap. So it's all the way. Like, you have to think more holistically without thinking of which bucket to put things in or box to think in. um, from the inception to customer care and how it's now, it's recent, it comes into how to dispose of the product after use. But before it was inception until the after customer has it, how you provide care.
And for our more nerdy engineering types out there, that was also a little bit of information about fashion brands and distribution of those. So that was new to you. All right, one last question. So also, this sort of buying behavior based on sort of fundamentals of human behavior. It seems to be a little bit, one of the things that you see everywhere is Maslow's pyramid of needs, fundamental human needs. It sort of seems a little bit in sort of some of the same fundamental thinking, but yet it's not the same. Do you see any similarities, and how is it different as well?
I would say it's different because that's hierarchy of needs that basically explains our behavior in society. And it's hierarchical. At the base level, you have physiological needs, and then security, then love, then self-respect, then actualization. So it's like a pyramid. So that's the 5 layers. But here, I'm not saying they are hierarchical or one is higher than the other. It's a mix of these 4 things that it's specifically related to buying, like purchase. Why do we buy things? So I think they're 2 separate things. One explains how people behave in society, but not even behave, the needs. Here, we explain why do people purchase things.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Please send us your feedback, and we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Have a great evening or day or whatever it is, wherever you are.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.